Okay, guys, we are here again on Radio Tekkers for the Volley. Myself and Mags will be joined by the freshly late Chris, hopefully later soon. But in the meantime, let's get into it, Mags. How about that? Yeah?
Let's do it. Come on.
Come down. I love that intro so much. So much.
We've got a talented team here at Radio Tekkers, that's for sure.
We do indeed. I am the magnificent Matt Willis, and I am joined, as always, by the person who should always be your right-hand man in podcasting, the Mr. Kablam himself, the Podfather Mags.
Ironically, I'm left-handed as well, so my right hand is absolutely useless.
I
appreciate the sentiment.
I love the one of the greatest things I've ever learned from radio is, do you know what the Latin is for left-handed?
I've heard it before, but I can't quite recollect. Go on.
Sinister.
That
not a lie.
Speaks volumes. It absolutely speaks volumes about left-handed people.
So. So we are here, obviously, to talk about the weekend Premier League football, of course. That would be match day 9. It's been a weekend full of goals and full of action. So how about we start with a game which wasn't on the weekend, a game which was on last Friday, of course. Dare we call it resurgence? Arsenal hosting Aston Villa.
I mean, how many resurgences can we call for Arsenal? Every time they put in a good couple of games run, they seem to fall back down again. But this was a great performance by Arsenal, and especially by Smith Rowe. I thought he was absolutely outstanding in this game. 3-1 victory. Partey with the opener from a corner. I think it was from Smith Rowe's corner, actually. But before that, he'd already hit the bar, so he was almost destined to get on the score sheet. And then Aubameyang missed his penalty, or rather, he had his penalty saved by Martinez, but was able to follow it up. And then Smith Rowe got on the score sheet, absolutely deserved a goal for the performance they put in. Ironically, the best goal of the game came when Jacob Ramsey just belted it from the edge of the 18-yard box into the top corner. There was absolutely no saving that, but this was a great performance by Smith Rowe and Arsenal, so they very much deserve these 3 points.
Absolutely. Need to just shuffle things around a little, sir, because we are being joined by the Chief Superintendent of Whiskey and Crisps.
Look at that. Fashionably late Mr. Chris. And also straight away, gone. And gone again.
He will be with us in a moment, of course. He will be with us momentarily, of course. Oh dear. Speaking of which, we're getting the chats when we started. Dan Griffin saying, please mention Smith Rowe. Transfer to my FF squad. Yeah. This weekend it's on the bench. Welcome to Mr. Chris Harris, of course, the roving reporter, chief scouting agent, and of course, head of tea and biscuits, we decided. So, how are you, our kid?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, I'm just buggering on as you do. I mean, just hunkering down and watching as much football as I can, really, because
in between your appearances on Unbooking the Territory.
Exactly, yeah.
Great episode.
I'm everywhere at the moment.
I know.
Like rats, I can infiltrate everywhere.
Thanks for that.
You are the COVID of the podcasting world.
The Black Death of podcasts.
Oh my goodness. We have reached that level, have we? Excellent. Well, it's always good, as always, to hear from you, Chris, of course. We've literally started, so we're discussing Arsenal 3, Aston Villa 1. Mags has painted a picture about the best goal being Ramsey's goal for Villa. What did you make of the game, personally?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is it was a game where we need to see a reaction from Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal, they've not had the best. I was about to say they've not had the best season. They've not had the best past few years. But this is a game where they really need to see a reaction out of them against an Aston Villa side that is struggling. It's struggled quite a bit this season. With the loss of Jack Grealish, so on and so forth. I don't think that the three at the back system, I don't think that works for Aston Villa. I think most of the threat last season came from wide areas, which, you just remove that. Obviously, taking out Grealish isn't going to help, but when you remove your wingers, you're relying on Target and Cash to provide the width, them solely. And I don't think that works for Villa. I don't think they're those sorts of players. I feel like Target and Cash are the sorts of players what can support wingers, but they can't provide the width, solely themselves. And I feel like that's something that we're seeing. I feel like Watkins and Ings, sorry, say that 5 times fast. I feel like that's a partnership that isn't firing, as much as both players were last season. So tactically, I don't think this Villa team set up well. But this Arsenal team, I feel like, the switching between the 4-4-2, the 4-5-1 that they've had over the past few games, I feel like that's worked out a lot better for them. Obviously, the game against Palace, wasn't good. They needed a reaction, and they played really well in this game. Like you said, I saw you already mentioned Emile Smith-Rowe, who's been brilliant this season. I think he's been an excellent player. And yeah, I feel like this Arsenal team, it feels like it's growing. It feels like it does feel like it's better than we were at this point at the start of the season. But still, though, if you compare them to, the teams what are pushing for Europa League, your likes of, even, your likes of Spurs, your West Hams, your Man United, even your Evertons, they don't compete with that, and yeah, they're just bang average. And I feel like that's something that the football community sort of accepted now, is that Arsenal's just bang average.
So when they have a performance like this, it actually stands out. It stands out as a good performance, because we're not used to seeing Arsenal dominate in the way that they dominated this game.
I think they're all very fair comments. We've seen Aston play a lot better than this, obviously, because it takes two to have a good football match. Although, having said that, as we'll come to later, sometimes not the case. But Arsenal, I think, definitely deserved the 3 points. It is good to see, as Mags has turned him like a sweat, and Aubameyang actually are amongst the goals a bit now this season, which is, Aubameyang's been banging the goals in even when if it came to the want away.
Yeah, I don't even think it's so much that they're even getting among the goals. It's they're both actually now showing passion for playing. Aubameyang was looking like somebody who wanted out of the club, who wasn't performing for the team, and now he is. He's now been that talisman, that leader that they needed. And when you've got talented players behind him, like Smith-Rowe, like Saka, like Odegaard, who need a leader to push them forward, I think that's always going to improve Arsenal. So the talent is there, the players, the quality is there. It's just getting results out of them week in, week out on a consistent basis. And I do feel for Villa as well on the other side of the coin, because they lost their biggest star in Grealish, and it was always going to be hard to replace that. Personally, I think they've spent brilliantly. I thought they brought in some really talented players. The problem is that they've not gelled together yet. I think if this team sticks together, I think we'll probably see better from them later on in the season, going into next season. But they're losing somebody with the output that Jack Grealish gave Villa was always going to be a big thing to try and replace, and they're just struggling to do that right now.
Notes from Mr. Dan Griffin in the chat. Hello, sir, of course, for already giving Chris Hathaway in the chat as well, which is fantastic. We love you for that.
I'm used to it.
Aubameyang dropped off significantly when he signed above the contract. He partially Ozil'd. Also noting on Matty Cash, he's begun the process to switch nationalities and pledged to play for Poland.
Which makes sense, because there's a plethora of English right backs, so he was never going to get a sniff
Yeah, absolutely.
The unfortunate thing is that in front of him, he's got at least Trent Alexander-Arnold and Reece James at minimum. If not, possibly the
And then you've got
choice.
your other, your elder statesmen like your Kyle Walker and your Kieran Trippier.
Kieran Trippier, I'd say yes. Kyle Walker, I wouldn't risk running a bath let alone up the right wing.
Well, Gareth Southgate seems to. I'm not about my personal opinions here. I'm on about where Southgate seems to.
Absolutely. He must have some picks on him or something for sure. That's the only thing I can think of here. Right. This is meant to be obviously a fast review, so we're going to move on from Arsenal and Villa, and we're going to talk about a game which not really an upset at all. Chelsea, Norwich City. Chris, you're wearing blue. Do you go first or about the Blues?
I mean, what a tenuous link.
Well, I think after this game,
tenuous.
I think after this game, Norwich were feeling the Blues. I'm really proud of that one. I just feel like that. What is there to say? It feels like it's not really been a different performance that Norwich have shown from any other game this season. It's just that Chelsea, they were more ruthless than the other teams that they've come up against, and they actually kept the foot on the gas for the whole 90 minutes. It was absolutely awful defending from Norwich. I mean, you got to think, they switched partway through the season, a couple of games into the season, they switched to that 3 at the back system. They're trying to be, they're trying to sit deep and they're trying to hit teams on the break more, because the 4-2-3-1 that they played in the Championship just doesn't work in the Premier League because they don't have a place to do it. So the idea is they sit deeper because the centre halves they have, Kabak, Hanley, Gibson, they're all much of a muchness. They're not going to be able to keep up with the pace of Premier League centre forwards. So they sit deeper and they try to, A, win the aerial battles, and B, make sure that they're not in 1v1 races with players. And neither of those things happened in this game. I feel like it was just constantly that back three was getting bullied. The space in between the lines was just being exploited brilliantly. I feel like even though he didn't get a goal, I feel like Kai Havertz played extremely well, but also, the obvious was, Mason Mount bagging his hat trick, Kovacic and Jorginho running the show in the midfield. It was just a faultless performance from Chelsea, really. And I don't really know what to say about Norwich. I mean, the players just aren't good enough for the Premier League, and the system that they're playing isn't helping them. So, it's just...
Chris has absolutely hit the nail bang on the head there. I think it's ironic that the main goal threat from Chelsea, both the strikers were out. So they were essentially doing a Pep. They were essentially having a false nine who was a midfielder. And that brought their biggest performance in years in terms of goal output. Everything that they hit was going in. And I really feel a lot of sympathy for Tim Krul, because I don't think this reflects well on him. And I think he was arguably Norwich's best player, especially if you look at that last 10 minutes. He could have easily got into double figures if it wasn't for Krul in the end. But we've got a team who were just absolutely on fire with Chelsea. Everything they were doing was going right. Ben Chilwell is on the purple patch of his life. The balls were just absolutely perfect going into the attacking third. It was just a great day at the office for Chelsea. And as we'll get into it later in the show, the big three really kind of stamped their dominance down on this weekend with Liverpool and with City, and then with Chelsea, all really kind of just demolishing their opponents. They really kind of shown just how top draw Premier League football actually is right now.
Yeah, you can tell from numbers, and numbers is what we like to work with on this. We love a stat on this show, obviously. 23 shots to 3, 13 shots on target to 1.
Which shows how Tim Krul outperformed.
Tim Krul was the man of the match for Norwich. His average rating, though, is 4.5. And just to put that in context, Chelsea's lowest ranked player was Ross Barkley at 7.1.
Wow.
Who had about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
About 15 minutes, yeah, about 15 minutes, give or take, yeah. Which puts it into context a little bit just how dominant Chelsea were. Dan Griffin in the chat saying that Norwich are the Premier League team who could improve their defending by watching Manchester United.
I think they're a Premier League team in name only. I mean, I know this is Chelsea, but where do you see Norwich picking up points against? Certainly not anybody around them, and yeah, it's looking grim.
And yet they
I would not be
against Arsenal.
Well, I mean, that was when Arsenal were in one of the woeful games. But I've got a horrible feeling that they may break the record for the lowest amount of points in the Premier League, because nobody in this Norwich side is Premier League quality. It's as simple and clear as that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the impact that Jack Grealish leaving Aston Villa had. But I mean, one of the replacements for Jack Grealish for Villa, Emi Buendia, I think he was involved either via goal or assist. I think he was involved in, 42% of Norwich's goals last season. And that just shows how much they're missing them. They've only scored 2 goals this season.
And another thing is how dominant Pukki is in the Championship, but when he comes up to the Premier League, he just hasn't got that class, which is a shame, because I like him as a player, but he's just not Premier League quality.
I will say, Mag, that his first season with Norwich, when he was in the Premier League, not this year, the 2 years ago, he looked okay, but I say they haven't really improved their team, have they, since they were in the Premier League last time?
Oh no, they were a much better team 2 seasons ago, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you just look at that team. That, like you say, Max, there's no one there who you would say, arguably Tim Krul, but apart from that, there's no one who you would say is Premier League quality in that team. I don't mind that Matthias Norman, who they brought in on loan. I think he's all right, and I feel like a Premier League club will probably snap him up on permanently next season. But like, for example, and I know Tanner's probably not going to like me saying this, Josh Sargent, he's just shit. Like, he's just so bad.
I think the most damning kind of analogy I can put with this is, I wouldn't look up and down that team and think who I would take at Burnley. I don't think there's particularly anyone, and we're around Norwich, so we should be looking at their team and seeing where we can improve. No one in that Norwich squad improves Burnley's team. It's as simple and clear as that.
Yeah.
Dan Griffin in the chat saying Todd Cantwell apparently has fallen out with Fark, of course. Apparently, not sure how true that is, but I no doubt Chris will be on the case to find that one out.
Yeah, I did hear that, to be fair.
And he does actually come to defence of Ozan Kabak, who proved that he can do it on the Premier League last season. Maybe so, but the reason why Liverpool didn't sign him permanently.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that I did notice a lot of mistakes from Kabak last season. I can't remember which game it was. It's going to really annoy me. But I remember a game he played last season where he was just awful. And I'd argue that he was more protected by the players around him rather than, him showing individual quality.
You're playing alongside Fabinho, which kind of makes him look better, actually, to be fair. Also, 5 minutes ago, the chat
been Man City, but I can't really remember. I'm going to look it up because it's really going to annoy me.
Okay, you do that. So while I do that, I'll get on with 5 minutes ago. The chat saying Fark will get fired soon. And despite what the media say, they spent money 9th most.
It was the Leicester game. That was it. I knew it was a team that played in blue. Alisson made a bad mistake on that same game. Yeah.
Dan Griffin saying there were errors, but he's still only 21. This is true. He's still a very young player.
But that doesn't mean he's any good right now. Just because he can be good in the future.
Protected by the mighty Nat Phillips, of course.
Yes, he was. He was now 5th choice.
But unfortunately, all the players who were injured are now back, unfortunately. And new one brought in as well. But, he is... But, to say, a bad annoyed word, Chelsea were nearly perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I think one shot on target, you got a fantastic goalkeeper in the goal. He didn't need to do anything.
That save he made with his legs, Mendy, when he was off his line, he was stranded and he had to rush out and save with his. That was a brilliant save, because most keepers would probably go for that with their hands and miss it, because he knew with his body position he was sort of leant back. he knew that he couldn't get that with his arms because he's not the tallest, is Mendy. For a keeper, he's probably below average height. So he knows he probably won't be able to reach that with his arms. So he sticks his legs out, and it was a brilliant stop.
Yeah, he's in the form of his career. He's absolutely he's could easily be in the argument for being the best keeper in the world today. Mendy. He's so brave. That's the one thing about him that I really like, the fact that he's willing to just throw himself at absolutely anything. I really enjoy watching Mendy play. I think he's been a big improvement for Chelsea.
He's a massive. He's certainly worthy of being put in the conversation of best keeper in the world for sure. There's 5 or 6 floating around which you could say are in that argument, and you've got to include in the conversation for me. You've got to include him. Let's move on to one of the 3 o'clock games from Saturday, which was Palace and Newcastle. Obviously, Newcastle looking for anything at the moment. Now they have finally paid $8 million out to Steve Bruce. Mags, were Palace unlucky not to win this game?
Absolutely. Palace on another day could have won this game 4-5, 6-1. Benteke on another day could have had a hat trick. He was so dangerous in this game, and Newcastle were very, 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 very lucky to come away with a point. Statistically, they had a woeful game. 25% of the ball, absolutely dominated. 15 shots from Palace to 6 from Newcastle. Great goal to pull the equaliser. Absolutely outstanding. The overhead kick by Callum Wilson, but he was the saving grace of another piss poor Newcastle performance. There's a hell of a lot of work there for the Saudis to do there, and I think they're kind of starting to understand the gravity of the situation. I think Paulo Fonseca's in talks to be the manager. And this was a team who were looking at maybe getting Conte in. I think now they've kind of tempered their expectations. But the concerning thing is for me is how brightly Palace started the season, but yet now they seem to be dropping points everywhere they go. I think they've still only got 1 win all season, which they're tumbling very much down the league now. I think they're 15th, which is only 5 points above Newcastle in the first place. They're certainly not out of the water. As Max Verstappen just drives past Matt again. Jesus Christ.
I'm so sorry.
The Newcastle got out of jail in this match for me, I think.
Yeah, they definitely played like a team without a manager. For all the talk about Graham Jones being, the one who turned around Newcastle season and he's a brilliant tactical mind. The one job he had, he failed at Luton. And that's the only managerial, experience that Graham Jones has had. Obviously he's not going to be a long-term manager there, but you could just tell that this wasn't a team led by a brilliant tactician. And like I said, it just took one moment of madness from Callum Wilson to be able to salvage something from this game that they really didn't deserve to. I feel like they were lucky that Odson Edouard had a particularly poor game. He looked all right at times, but he was just in front of goal. He was just completely ineffective. He just didn't look dangerous. And I think as a centre forward, that's your main job, is to try to be dangerous. All the other stuff, the pressing from the front, the dropping back, laying balls off. That's secondary if you're a centre forward to being dangerous and being a goal threat, and that's something that Edouard wasn't. But yeah, I just feel like Newcastle nicked one. But like you said, there's a lot of work to be done for Fonseca, who does look like will be the man who takes over. It is, it's going to be a big task ahead of him. What did y'all think about the ruled out goal?
I think it was fair. There was certainly some holding back, not from Benteke's point. I think he did everything right. And the fact that he hit the bar twice, this was the Benteke from Villa. The Benteke that was destroying teams. I've always had like a soft spot for Benteke. I think he's someone who's kind of in the old mold of a footballer, like being a big bully of a forward. But yeah, the goal certainly should have been ruled out and was rightly ruled out. I think Newcastle's best player was the crossbar.
We got Dan Griffin in the chat is saying, I like to see Benteke looking near his best. He was glorious at Villa, never suited Liverpool. Unfortunately, it just didn't work, at Liverpool.
And it's taken him a while at Palace as well. I mean, he had that brilliant first season at Palace, but then he just sort of fell off a cliff and scored like 5 goals in 3 years until last season, where he started to get firing again. I don't know what it must have been a mental thing or something. I can't
belief. Maybe it's belief in a manager. Maybe that's what it is. Sometimes a different coach is brought in. Sort of. Conor McKay, hello from you to all of us.
Sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure. Never a chore. Graham Jones, talking about Callum Wilson, says he's the best matchday finisher I have ever worked with.
I mean, he's going to say that. That's his player, but yeah, that's certainly a hyperbole.
But at the same time, as Chris said, he's worked at Luton. So between Luton and Newcastle, no offence, Luton, you haven't had Messi play for you, for example. So I can see why he would say that. And to be fair, Callum Wilson is a very good striker.
Yeah.
Probably the best player at Newcastle, besides St. Maximin.
Definitely, St. Maximin is definitely the best player.
I'm still not sure about St. Maximin. He seems like, not in play style, but he seems like another Adama Traore, where he's a flashy winger. He looks good on the highlight reels, but there's just no end product there. Mm-hmm. He'll make a brilliant run. He'll beat 2 men. He'll take his men on. Do your nice fancy little step overs, but then his cross will go out for a throw in. Or the shot will go into Rowe's head. Like there's no end product there, and I feel like if he wants to make that step up, like there was talks of a move to Liverpool, for example, in the summer. If he wants to be able to make that sort of step up as a player, he needs to add that end product onto his game. Otherwise, he's a flashy winger, but what does that mean really?
Yeah, I get that, but I think when you see how poor Newcastle are as a team, and you see one player showing passion and showing at least a little bit of technical skill, he stands out a lot more than the rest, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I do think, of course, he stands out. He's definitely one of their best players. He's definitely in the top 2. I'm just personally not as convinced on him as a lot of other people are.
Yeah, like Dan Griffin in the chat, for example, who said that Klopp would turn St. Maximin into a beast. Yeah, but who do you drop? For that to happen, you've got to play. You've got to drop one of the players, and as we're going to find later on, a lot of people wouldn't drop any of that front three at the moment.
I mean, Gary Neville would certainly drop 5 of them because he put 5 Man United players in that. But I'm sure we will get to that.
We will get to this. We'll get to this. And a one-man crusade against an idiot. Okay, speaking of idiots, Mr. Ray Cash.
I apologise. Love this one.
I apologise, Mags, if you be so kind. Everton versus Watford. Everton, by the way, who had this in the bag on paper.
Absolutely, they should have won. And I can't wait to rub this in Ray's face, especially after we tried to convince him to pick a more rounded team. He went with Everton and he absolutely fell on his fucking sword. Everton were... They started brightly, though. That's the best thing. They started really kind of bright. Took the early lead. Josh King was able to kind of pin that back. But they didn't look to be much threat from Watford for long periods of this game. And then when you Richarlison scored, you thought that was it. You thought, okay, game over. Everton have done enough to win. And then Watford turned into fucking Liverpool. This was like a massive, massive transformation. I didn't realise Josh King was channeling his inner Messi. Everything they touched just turned into absolute gold. And Everton just folded like a deck of cards. It was glorious to watch. I was actually in the chat for Steve O's EPL feed whilst this was happening, and we were essentially just listening in real time as Everton just folded and folded and folded. It was glorious to hear. But Yeah, what a performance by Watford. I mean, Watford, everyone has them pinned to go down. Kind of like Norwich, they haven't got a team that you would say is Premier League quality, but God damn, they put it to Everton. And it was so good to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really looked like the the Claudio Ranieri effect worked. They looked a lot similar to that Sampdoria team that he managed last season, the season before. Everything from the intensity, they were actually taking on players, the directness of the player. It was just brilliant to see. And Josh King, like you say, up front leading the line, he had to step up. He had to, be able to convert all these chances. And that's what he did. He really, sort of went back to his Bournemouth days. Because he's had a tough time these past couple of years as Josh King. Obviously last season, the season before that he got relegated. But he still looked all right, but he didn't look brilliant. And then obviously last season, spending half a season in the Championship, it was a torrid time for him with injuries and not being played because he's on too high wages, trying to be forced out of the club, and then going to Everton, where he just did absolutely nothing for them. So going to Watford, where a lot of people seem to write him off because of his time at Everton. He seemed like he was disinterested. He seemed like he was just aloof almost. But yeah, he's just come back and he's reminded people that he is a good centre forward, because I always thought he was the better of the two at Bournemouth. I always thought he was better than Callum Wilson.
I mean,
Wilson was the one who finished the chances, but King was more well-rounded. Sorry, Max, what are you saying?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when he was at Bournemouth and he was in that hot streak with Callum Wilson, they were linking him with Man United, and it seemed that he was destined for big things. And yeah, he had an absolute torrid spell. But to go back to a former club where it kind of capitulated how poor your run of form was, and to go on and stick 3 goals on them is absolutely a phenomenal comeback. And I think he scored his 50th Premier League goal in this game as well. So that shows that he's got Premier League chops. He knows where the goal is in the Premier League. So yeah, I thought that this was a real good kind of comeback for the guy. He absolutely deserved it.
It was fantastic. I mean, as Matt from 5 Days Go in the chat says, it's peak Everton buying Josh King for $4 million for 6 months to get no goals in 11 games, and then he comes back and puts a hat-trick past England's #1 goalkeeper. I'm more intrigued by the stupidity of $4 million for 6-month contract. That is kind of odd. But they're not taking anything away from the rest of Watford. Let's not forget that obviously Dennis and Pedro, they literally changed the game when they came on. Yeah. They literally changed the game.
I think the person who changed the game, and if you look down the timeline, was Alex Iwobi, because they brought him on 2 minutes later. Kuka scored, and then King scored, and then King scored again, and then Dennis scored. So it's the Alex Iwobi effect. And he just ruined it for Everton.
Each one was getting more and more depressing from the Everton Twitter. And
the Everton Twitter was glorious. The Everton Twitter was absolutely glorious, because they got more and more upset. Depressed. They got more upset than Mark Goldbridge did when he was doing his live stream of Man United and Liverpool. When it got to the 5th Watford goal, they just put Dennis 90, and that's it. That's all they put. It was brilliant.
As someone who I use the word hate for extreme individuals, but I will get to later on about how my feeling about Mr. Goldbridge.
He's funny. You can't hate him. He's so funny. Just laugh at him.
Yeah, but he makes a mockery out of what I try to do seriously, even though I'm a clown. So anyway, we'll get on to that later on. Anyway, Dan Griffin in the chat is saying 5 scored 5 and
Pepperidge Farm remembers. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah. For all the talk about Arsenal, getting rinsed for Nicholas Pepe, at the same time they turn around and rinse Everton for Alex Iwobi. So.
To be fair, I thought Iwobi was a decent player. To be fair, but maybe he just had better players around and make him look as good as he was.
Mm-hmm.
That is unfortunate, but as there's going to be a dissection of what happened at Everton, no doubt, and for their sake, they better come out fighting this weekend coming because they need a reaction for sure.
Definitely, This feels more like the Everton of old that would sort of capitulate under any sort of pressure. Rafa, he's known for making his teams more solid. Whenever he comes into a new team, but this very much feels like a back to the drawing board sort of situation.
Absolutely.
They're certainly missing as well that attacking threat of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It just shows how important he is to that team.
Yeah.
I mean, next weekend they've got Wolves away, which is it's going to be a cold Monday night in November, so that'll be an interesting one for sure. November already, Jesus Christ. Talking about a place which in that vein, actually, talking about Wolves, let's talk about the Wolves game. Wolves won, Leeds won at Elland Road. Now, I know that you gentlemen aren't the biggest fans of Leeds, being from a similar neck of the woods, but your thoughts?
Chris is probably more of a fan of them than I am, being he's from
because I'm closer.
Yorkshire. Yeah,
right.
just geographically.
No, that means I dislike them more. But honestly, where I'm from, Keighley, it's half Burnley fans and half Leeds fans. So honestly, I not on this like. So you see, you've got Blackburn here, right? You've got, and then here you have like I don't know, like Bolton. Like here's where Leeds are. So.
Jesus. But yeah, Watford must hate Leeds because they, as much as Newcastle picked the pocket of Palace, Leeds fucking picked the pocket of Wolves in this game. Jesus Christ. This was so unfair to Wolves, in my opinion. I think they had way more of the ball. Leeds had way more of the ball, but just weren't able to do anything really with it. And Hwang, what is it now? 4 goals in 6. So he's turning out to be an absolute star. But yeah, this was smash and grab at the very, very best of it with the very, very late penalty.
I think it's Gethart is the
Gelhardt.
Yeah, apparently he was quite the saviour for Leeds United in this game. It came on obviously literally for half an hour ago. Did enough to get the job done.
And Chris is absolutely disgusted with his Leeds talk. Chris there just loving the Leeds hate that much. He dipped out. Yeah. And I think it's didn't Rafinha also come off injured as well? So that's going to be a massive a loss for Leeds, a team that are also missing Bamford as well. So it's not going to be a good few upcoming weeks for Leeds, but they didn't. I don't feel that they deserve this point at all. I think Wolves can feel well hard done to.
Yeah, I feel like definitely bringing on Joe Gelhardt. That was the big difference. I feel like, because he's only a young lad, this Joe.
I think he's like about 18, maybe 19.
I think he's 18 or something like that. I think they signed him off Wigan last season.
Yeah.
And yeah, because he was cheap, like $500,000 or something, because that's when Wigan were like, in low financially. And yeah, he came on, he changed the game, he won the penalty, and he actually tested Sarr a couple of times, and I think he's been brilliant. I feel like. Because Leeds have had to rely. They've had a torrid time with injuries. Really, they've had to rely on playing a young centre mid at right back, for example, for most of the season. So I feel like we are really we're not seeing the best of Leeds at the moment. I think that's blatantly obvious, and I feel like as the season progresses, it will sort of level out more. But yeah, I mean, as for Wolves, I mean that's 4 unbeaten now. They've got themselves on a decent little run. Apart from the Brentford game, it's actually been a tremendous bit of form. In the next few games, they've got Everton at home, Palace away, West Ham at home, Norwich away, and Burnley at home. That's their next 5. So that's a big chance for Wolves to be able to propel themselves back up the table and sort of get themselves back into sort of European races, which they were, 2-3 seasons ago.
Out of those fixtures, you'd think they'd be aiming for at least 10 points.
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed. A few quite big friends from the chat here. Nelson Tomato and Junior Furbo showing how bad Barca's recruitment is. Both are
Didn't
tragic
they pay
defenders.
like 30+ million for Semedo as well?
Something on those lines, yeah.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah, Dan Griffin followed it up by saying, "Who'd have ever thought a team with Bamford so much?"
I don't think it's just missing
that's a little
Bamford as well, though. I
harsh.
think it Calvin Phillips as well. He's been
That's the
out
main
for
one, yeah.
quite a
That's
while.
amazing.
So yeah, I think it's just they are kind of suffering a similar lines that Liverpool did last season, where they lost some big hitters and they had to essentially scramble to create a team.
Indeed, and Huang is proving to be a decent side so far. Absolutely a new. He is.
Huang.
He has been electric, and
especially since Raul Jimenez, he was never going to be the same player. After not playing for however long, 8 months or whatever it was. He was never gonna. He's looked good, but he's 30 years old and he's just come back from a massive injury, so he's not gonna. He's not going to be the same player. So I feel like bringing Juan in to get the goals, that was a really important signing for Wolves.
Yeah, it takes a lot of pressure off Jimenez.
Yeah, and it's definitely someone who will want to wrap up on a permanent next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's for sure. If they don't, someone else will, because he's that sort of player who could go on to big things for sure. Then good thing as well. It's just easier to rag on Bamford.
It is. Yeah, he cries in his car. Did you know?
I did not know that. Is that a thing?
Yeah, he cries in his car. After training sessions at Burnley, he said he used to go into his car and cry for hours. So,
oh, well, on
because
that
Sean
note,
Dyche didn't like him, apparently.
Well, talking about Mr. Dyche and about Burnley, let's let you gentlemen wax lyrical about how you guys, with your new signing, who wants
That's
to?
the only thing we're going to be waxing lyrical about is Big Max, because he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. He is the best player in the Premier League. He is the greatest player to ever step foot in the town of Burnley. And that includes cricket as well. Yeah, he's brilliant.
He was the difference maker in this game as well. Absolutely was the difference maker. Without Cornet in this game, this was another lose. And I think it's a little bit early saying in October to call in games 6-pointers, but this was certainly a game that we needed to not lose. I know Chris has said on Twitter that he's firmly pushing the panic button. I'm not as sour and down as him. I think that this shows that we can still hang with the bottom half of the Premier League. And Cornet's finishing is it's sublime. He's our St. Maximin, but he can also finish. Which is just unreal. That second goal was just hit from nowhere, and it was just glorious. But the cross from Lawton for the first goal was brilliant. It's just Cornet has just lifted the club. Yeah, the things that he can do are phenomenal.
He's a class above, definitely.
Yeah, but we did get pinned back, and for Southampton absolutely deserved to equalise. Livramento was a danger for a lot of the game, and they did deserve to take the lead. But I think a point was fair. I think in terms of chances, we more than held our own. It's not always the easiest place to go, isn't Southampton? And I think on balance, a point is fair, but this was certainly a game that we couldn't lose. We definitely needed to at least keep Southampton in our sights, because we don't want to get to the point where we need win after win after win to just climb out of the relegation zone. At least it's still quite tight down there, and a couple of good victories will get us out of the rut. But there was certainly lots of positives to come out of this game. Cornet is just head and shoulders above anyone that's playing on Burnley's side right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you say, it's just a bit of a rut. I mean, some of our defending this season has been absolutely fucking woeful, honestly. I think especially, I don't like to pick out individuals, especially for my club. But Charlie Taylor's just been absolutely awful this season. I think almost every single game, almost every attack from the opposition team has been down their right-hand side or our left-hand side, and his defending has just been awful. I mean,
even Tark hasn't been the strong, solid defender. He's made mistakes this season, and you almost
look at the first goal. That was a Tarkowski mistake. Don't know why he was trying a stupid little Cruyff turn in his own half when he was under pressure.
It's almost like he has one eye on the exit. Which is a shame.
Oh, yeah.
It really is a shame. I know that there's talk of him having a gentleman's agreement that if a bid comes in January, that Burnley won't stand in his way. And I hope he goes on to do good things. He's been a great servant for the company, for the club.
You American Max.
Yeah. He's been a great servant for the club. But yeah, his mistakes have not helped Burnley in this kind of terrible run we've been on.
Yeah, and I think his best centre half this season has probably been Big Nathan Collins. I mean, he's been an absolute revelation. I mean, I watched him for a few of his friendlies. I watched him with the one against Blackpool, and he looked, because he hadn't played since February for Stoke. He had I think he broke his ankle, so he hadn't played, and he looked a little bit dodgy. He looked a little bit off. His passing was a little bit wayward, but. This in the league especially, he's really stepped up his game, and it's been probably his best centre half this season. And yeah, I just feel like something that needs to change as well as his midfield. I mean, I like Cork, I like Westwood. They've been good servants to the club, but it's the same midfield that we've been running since 2016.
Yeah,
and
that's the issue.
Yeah, exactly. They're just not good enough anymore.
Do you need just one? Do you need like a holding midfield, or do you think just one player can unlock its potential?
Well, I just feel like it's. I just feel like we need to shift Brownhill back from the number 10 spot, because that not only does that give Westwood a bit more time, a bit more security, because he's so good. I don't know why he's playing him as a number 10 when last season he was our best defensive midfielder. I feel like if we bring in a number 10, someone like, a lot of talk has been put onto Ross Barkley. I know that whenever anyone says this, it's a case of, oh yeah, sure.
Even Chris couldn't finish that sentence for him.
Unfortunately, you think Chris is a little bit woeful. Unfortunately,
yeah. I think what he was hinting at is essentially Ross Barkley joining a club like Burnley because it's where players go to retire. And with him having biscuit knees and having lots of injury problems, but I do get Chris's point that we need some sort of a solid player in that number 10, so who can still give us a attacking flair, but also able to support the front line and the defence. So we do need some more strength, and we need more depth. It's as simple and clear as that. We've still got one of the smallest squads in the Premier League. Even with the money from America, so hopefully we'll spend well in January and get back to winning ways.
And spend sensibly in January as well, of course.
He's back.
He's close to me Wi-Fi next time. Honestly, I don't know what.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by the internet was. I know everyone says, if anyone says this, it's always a case of, oh, yeah, sure you do, pal. But I do know someone who is in deep in the club. And he reckons...
Chris is in the know. I'm in the know.
No, I know. And I would react the same way. But to be fair, this bloke, he was spot on with the Cornet deal and he was spot on with the Roberts deal. So I trust him. He reckons that Barkley will happen. We wanted him on loan this summer, but it was just too late. We couldn't get the deal across the line. But he reckons it will happen in January. So, that's definitely going to be a big help. Pushing Josh Brownhill, who is our best midfielder, pushing Josh Brownhill back into the deeper role, that will help. But I think, we do need another centre mid on top of that as well, because I don't think Cork or Stevens is good enough. And I think Westwood isn't good enough to start most games.
Well, hopefully they do some sensible signings. It's sensible. It'll be sensible as well as good signings, of course. The chat's being a little bit harsh to you guys here, talking about the reason why Bamford was crying was because he finished training was still in Burnley. That's just causing trouble, Dan Griffith. Just causing trouble. But it's also agreed.
I mean, there is a hint of truth in that.
The chat is also agreeing that Tarkowski will be heading to Newcastle in January.
I think that's a
money. Okay, so
I'm not so sure. I still reckon, unless they come in with a stupid bid, I still reckon the club would rather just let him go for free at the end of the season. I don't think they want to sell him.
No, we'll see what happens with that side of things. Matt from Follows goes that the sad thing is that there are championship sides with better midfields than Burnley.
There's championship sides that spend a hell of a lot more money than Burnley, though.
Exactly, yeah.
Look at Fulham, for example. And don't get up.
Yeah, I mean, we've spent a good 7 seasons now or something like that. So, yeah.
Well, talking about championships, talk about the championship winning team from last year, Man City, who were away at Brighton. That word, Matt. Away at Brighton and Hove Albion. Again, as Mag said, they did earlier, this really was a case of Man City just underlining their credentials for defending the title, although no team has done that for 6 years now.
I mean, they're in the mix,
absolutely.
They're still in the three, and kind of what I said at the beginning of the show. This week was about the big three showing just how dominant a team they were, and this is a Brighton team who were in the Champions League qualifying spots. They've been playing some glorious football for the last 2 seasons. And it's just that this season the results were going right for Brighton. They were able to pick off win after win after win. But they came up against City, and at a canter, City just demolished them. Absolutely demolished them. They could have easily had 6 or 7 goals, and I think there was one that was brilliantly cleared off the line by Lewis Dunk early in the game, but that was just a reprieve, I suppose. And City just essentially had the way with Brighton in this game. Foden, as much as I ragged on him during the Euros, he had an amazing game. Gundogan played really well. This was a classy performance by Man City.
I think it's happened
again. I take it that's Chris's internet going yet again.
Unfortunately, Chris, as soon as Chris can rejoin us, he will do so, of course. Mag, we love talking about stats, and we're going to continue doing so with this game. Considering that Brighton had 10 shots, 5 on target, that's not bad against Man City until you see what they had for 23 shots, 14 on target.
And with very similar possession numbers as well. I mean, Man City only had 52% of the ball, so the way that they used that was absolutely phenomenal. And it's actually ironic that probably the best player on the pitch was actually a Brighton player, Solly March. I thought he played absolutely out of his skin, and on another day could have easily got a couple of goals himself. But yeah, this was the Phil Foden show. He was involved in pretty much everything that Man City was doing right. I mean, if this is the kind of performances they're putting in against other top 4 teams, I think the rest of the Premier League need to be scared. And again, they're still playing without a recognised striker up front. It's unreal.
Yeah, it does sort of feel like Man City sort of goes under the radar a little bit. I feel like because they've always been so consistent, Man City, being, consistently at the top of the table. If they're not top, they're usually second. So I feel like it sort of goes under the radar. They're sort of accepted that, they're brilliant, sort of, that's sort of the expectations. Whereas with, Chelsea and Liverpool, there's more ups and downs. So I feel like when they're better, it's more noticeable. But I feel like Manchester City still has to be the favourites for the Premier League. I feel like, they just play constantly like champions. And I feel like this sort of summed it up, this game. It wasn't, because like you say, they didn't have a brilliant game. They weren't, the emphatic. They weren't going 90 miles an hour for 90 minutes.
But
like you said,
there was that last season. Last season, that was their whole mantra. They didn't give one performance last season where you would say that was outstanding. That's the Man City that dominates. But they consistently win. They do enough to win all the time.
Exactly, yeah. And they were just fine, and they scored 4 goals against a team that before this had conceded 5 goals in 8.
Yeah.
So that just sums it up really, how they didn't even have to try, and they were brilliant. Man City.
I say Brighton are still 5th in the weekend as well. That's not bad. They'd take that season. But you would, wouldn't you? Brighton, wouldn't you?
Absolutely would.
Looking at some of the ratings that have been dished out for this game is the top-ranked Man City player for this game was Bernardo Silva with 7.6, and Brighton's best player was March, 8.4.
Yeah, March had a really good game.
Yeah, so I mean, sorry, March, very good game indeed. Very good game. I've got to say that I had, as Meg said, special credit goes to Dunk for his goal line clearance. Close they actually had to get the actual lines out.
Well, look how City started the season with the loss to Tottenham. They haven't lost since. They've not lost a game since. Picked up 20 points in 24. This is a dominant team. It's as simple and clear as that. And Chelsea and Liverpool are going to have to be on top form all the way through the season to keep pace with them.
Absolutely. As Matt from Fido's Go in the chat says, City at their best a few years ago, as Bernardo Silva as a centre midfielder, got shoved wide for a few seasons, his form dropped, and then Pep put him back in the midfield to Foden and Grealish and Dominic again.
That comment
brilliant.
Wasn't aimed at Matt from 5 Nerds Ago. This is definitely a Chris internet issue.
Yes, I'm sort of here for it.
But Matt makes a great point. That Foden and Grealish partnership in this game was unplayable. Grealish, whilst he's not the goal threat that he was at Villa, he certainly has quickly got that sixth sense with the rest of his team, and he was certainly a great provider in this game. This is worrying for anyone who's coming up against this City team, that if they can beat Brighton at a canter, what are they going to do to the likes of West Ham? What are they going to do to the likes of Villa? What they're going to do to Burnley? What they're going to do to Leeds? It's going to be quite worrying for everyone coming up against them.
This is all very true, but let's not forget, of course, that this same Man City team couldn't score against Southampton.
That's also very, very true.
So 9 times out of 10, Megs, absolutely, this is what happens against a team which will be happy with mid-table. But every now and again, you will get a shocker come up. They're few and far between, so when they happen, we relish them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of relishing things, obviously, Brentford, the Tekkers team of the season.
What a tenuous.
You don't have to try to sort of crowbar in a transition.
I'm not.
Time.
I'm not.
You could just say, right, we'll move on to the next game then. You don't have to say, speaking of relish and...
It does work. But to be fair, Brentford are relishing being in the top flight. They are literally not scared of anybody. And for a while, they look like they'll get something out of this game. Possibly your best goal weekend from Tielemans.
I mean, it's up there. It certainly is. And
I'm sure a lot of Leicester fans were producing some relish when they saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that after I gave you grief for saying that money no object, you would pick Tielemans to come to Liverpool, and he's hitting a patch of form like this. But yeah. Leicester absolutely deserve this victory. Brentford, again, as they've done time and time in the Premier League, they've shown that they're not scared. They've shown that they're willing to take the fight to anyone that they're coming up with, and that shows in the possession. It's not often that Leicester are dominated in terms of possession, but in this game, Brentford had 54% of the ball, which shows just how brave this Brentford side are, and they also had more shots than Leicester. But I think Maddison is starting to find that kind of that patch of form that made him a target for the big clubs a couple of seasons ago. Made him kind of like one of the fixtures on the England team sheet. So yeah, this was a really classy performance by Leicester, and Daka as well. Even though I still don't think he scored a Premier League goal after his exploits in Europe, but he was so unselfish for that second goal to make sure they got the victory. This was a really good win for Leicester. Then they absolutely needed it.
Absolutely, they did need it. Daka is a player I have a lot of time for. He seems to be a player which Mags. Did you manage to get him in your fantasy team, Mags?
I have him. He's not played enough. He doesn't get enough Premier League minutes or Premier League goals to do anything for me. So he is sat on my bench. But now we're having Lukaku injured. He may get more game time.
Yeah. I've got to say, as good as Leicester were to get the win, because let's say Leicester had to grind one out to get this result, I feel. But at the same time, I don't like James Maddison. So there's something about it I don't like him.
Okay, I mean
he's a very good. He's a very, very good player. But
that's mean.
I just don't like his face.
Yeah,
I don't like his attitude. I mean, he did the whole thing where he's copying Jamie Vardy too much for me. Vardy did the whole thing where he literally sticked to the crowd in celebration, but he literally, he's literally the whole time just telling the bit of crowd to go shh. I'm like,
oh yeah, because Jamie Vardy invented that, didn't he?
I'm saying, find your own gimmick. Seriously?
I mean, it's not wrestling though; it's football. He was just excited they scored a goal. He's like I said, he struggled for a majority of last season, and he's struggled at the beginning of this season. But he's finally got back on the score sheet, and he was happy about it. I don't begrudge him that. I think he's a very, very talented player who just had a very rough patch of form recently.
Okay, maybe I'm being a bit harsh.
Well, you're also the same person who said you wouldn't have Mbappe at Liverpool, and also Thiago is not an amazing player. So
no. I said Thiago.
No, there's no defending that. There's no buts.
I said Thiago. I agree about the Mbappe thing, and I stand by that. But at the same time, I stand by that. I think Chris is having. He's back. He's fine. He kicked him out. No, he's gone. Yeah, he's gone.
No, he's definitely gone.
Yeah. I stand by my Mbappe comments, Mags, but at the same time, Thiago had a bad season. By his own high standards, he wasn't the player he could have been last year, and this year he was doing fine to his injury.
Yeah.
So I stand by my comments because they're not as bad as you're making them out to be.
That's fair.
Okay. So,
I just like to rag on you. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about West Ham and Tottenham.
Tottenham. Jesus Christ. Are this club ever going to catch a break? It's starting to get sad now. No, I mean, I like to rag on them. I absolutely do like to rag on them, especially after all the stuff that happened in the pre-season with Kane. They were kind of like the laughing boys. Started the season really well with that win over City, and then it's just been so stop-start. And they did nothing in this game against West Ham. They had the majority of the ball, 62% of the ball, could only manage 7 shots to West Ham's 13. And yeah, they were just getting outplayed all over the park. And even when chances were coming their way, there was just no end product. Skip, he had a glorious chance early on in the first half. Absolutely mistimed his run and his jump for the ball. Kane probably had the best chance when he was able to stab on the delivery from Cresswell, but it was just poor. And then Mikel Antonio, a guy who was at Tottenham and was turned down for a youth trial, came up and popped up with the goal. Great finish, calm in the box, surrounded by the Spurs defence. But yeah, West Ham deserved it. They absolutely deserved this win.
Absolutely, this win moved West Ham up to fourth in the table on 17 points from the first 9 games. That's a pretty good return. 5 wins already, which is great. And it's Moyes' best start to a season since he had Everton in 2004-05 season. So he are you all right there, sir?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to phone now because my internet's fully down. So.
Wow.
Well, sorry to hear that, unfortunately, but welcome back, sir. What did you make of West Ham Tottenham?
A really good West Ham performance again. Really, I feel like David Moyes is really building something half decent here at West Ham.
And he's got again. Brilliant. But I agree with him. I think after being a star at Everton, after being handpicked for that Man United job, and that all kind of collapsing around his ears, he had to, and then the Real Sociedad bullshit. I think he had a massive job to rebuild his reputation, and I think he's absolutely done that at West Ham. I mean, you're looking at West Ham now, who end the weekend in 4th place, already in Europe. Yeah, it's
and doing well in Europe, to be fair as well.
Yeah,
Max.
It's a great return of form for him. Yeah, so I've always liked David Moyes. I think he's always been a classy manager, and the pressure at Man United and on his shoulders was just too much. I think he's done well to rebuild it. Yeah.
We've got a comment in the chat here, which I actually have to disagree with, from Con McCabe. West Ham kind of upset Spurs.
I don't believe it was an upset at all.
Not at all. West Ham played very well in the game. In fact, the reason they're 4th in the league is because they play very well. They are a team of players. They're not a group of players. They are a team. And West Ham
when you have almost half of the ball as Tottenham, and still are able to get off double the amount of shots, that shows that West Ham were the better side.
West Ham,
yeah. West Ham had 38% possession at home, and they still came up with a win. Because at the end of the day, it's not the possession you have; it's what you do with it, which is the important thing, of course. What do you make of? I mean, obviously, Zuma's come into the team, done a solid job at the back for him. And West Ham have also brought in Areola on loan. But he can't get a look in with Fabianski in the form he's in.
I know, Fabianski. I mean, he's like 34 years old now, been in the Premier League for decades, it seems. And he's probably as good as he's ever been in the Premier League. I think he's absolutely been superb. And I think Zuma, he left Chelsea just at the right time. I think he was really coming into his own. He put up his best numbers for Chelsea last season. So for West Ham to get him, and to get him for the fee that they got him for, I thought that was an absolute steal. And he's kind of carrying on where he left off at Chelsea. He's like a tank. He's got issues. Maybe he gets injured quite a lot. But when he's playing, he's very, very hard to beat. He's fast, but he's also massive. So yeah, I think they picked up a really good signing with him.
Relatively cheap, wasn't it, Chris?
I think it was 20 million.
I think it was roughly something like that. Yeah, I can't exactly remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but I think it was roughly like 25 million. So yeah, that's a really good price for someone like Zuma, who was never going to be a starter for Chelsea. I think last season he played quite a few minutes because of injuries, But he was never going to be a starter. You got like Rudiger, Christensen, Thiago Silva, Aspilicueta, all ahead of him. So to go somewhere like West Ham, where they have European football, they're competing for the top four. That's the perfect place for Zuma to go, where he's guaranteed game time, and also it's a place where he can compete for things. And yeah, he's just shown how brilliant he is. Like Mags has said, he's quick, he's fast. I'd just be parroting on what Mags has said. But yeah, he's just a brilliant defender to add to this already solid West Ham back line.
We were talking, of course, in the Champions League final last season when we mentioned when Thiago Silva went off injured, and we were all saying bring Zuma on because of the form he was in, and they brought Christensen who did a fine job. Let's face it. So I'm very pleased to see that Zuma landed on his feet, and he's a unit. He is a real unit. He can lead as well, which is what you want.
I mean, last season he got 5 goals in the Premier League. That was equal to essentially all the goals that he scored in terms of league throughout his whole career, even back at St Etienne. So for him to be picked up for West Ham for the money that they got him for and the performances he's putting in, yeah, he's been an absolute bargain.
For sure. But we're just getting around a bit, Mags, and I'm trying to not look too smug about things, but
I'm more interested to hear Chris's take on this game, because we got the pleasure of doing this live, and it was glorious. It was absolutely glorious. So I want to hear what Chris has to say about Man United and Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, unlike you lads, I actually didn't watch this game live. I was working at the time, so I had to go back and watch it, already knowing what the result was. So yeah, I was more looking out for the sort of individual sort of errors, sort of stuff that led to goals. Stuff that I noticed Manchester United lacking, or stuff that I noticed Liverpool being particularly good at. And what I noticed was men against boys. It was complete and utter domination. Man United were outfought. They were outthought. They were out-battled, and they were just totally hopeless for 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think.
I know. I'm sorry. I know you're expecting some sort of deep, analytical dive, but the fact is just one team was shite and one team was brilliant. So,
and it wasn't just as if one particular player or a couple of players let Man United down. It was the whole 11. Everybody on that pitch let Man United down. Harry Maguire, who's meant to be this leader, has been in the worst form of his career. Him and Luke Shaw multiple times were tripping over each other. And this Liverpool front line were just absolutely eating it up. I mean, Naby Keita, who I have ragged on, he far and away outperformed everybody in a Man United shirt. And we actually were struggling, if you take out Salah's hat-trick, to find who was the best player for Liverpool, because everybody was the best player. Kanate absolutely had Ronaldo in his pocket. Alexander-Arnold and Robertson were amazing going forward. That front line were fluid in between, even to the point where they brought Mane on because he thought, I'm going to get in among the goals here. It was a masterclass performance by Liverpool. The only issue is, as Milner picked up a significant injury, or will he be back? But yeah, this was Chris explained it perfectly. Men against boys.
The injuries are being looked at this week. In fact, we should know the next day or two just how severe Naby Keita's injury sustained by Paul Pogba.
Pogba, who was on the pitch for 15 minutes?
The exact time is 16 minutes, 32 seconds.
And that it could have easily been 3 people sent off, 4 people sent off for Man United, because Ronaldo probably should have got sent off for kicking out at Curtis Jones. Fred with that high boot could have got sent off. again, of Navigator. So Man United are lucky that they ended the game with only 10 men. But yeah, this was a horrible performance, and I don't know how Ole has the brass neck to stay on after this job, because he should have left. This was disgusting of a Man United team. Mm-hmm.
I mean, as Matt Fowler goes in the chat, Liverpool never left first gear. All they did was switch play, and Shaw and Wan-Bissaka tried to press Robertson and Trent instead of Jota and Salah, which exposed Maguire and Lindelof. Absolutely. It was, as Chris has said, men against boys. I mean, some of the stats are ridiculous. We went through them at extent yesterday. I'm just looking at. But you always see at the bottom of any BBC Sport page the comment section. I haven't read any of the comments. I've just looked at the number.
Jesus Christ, 7,500 comments.
I'm guessing that all of them lined of Ole out, I'm guessing. This is probably the time where I should address what I was going to address earlier about Mr. Mark Goldbridge, who was on Soccer AM on Saturday morning. And specifically said,
and Gary Neville, don't let Gary Neville off the hook for the comments that he made as well.
I'm not. We're going to get to Gary Neville in a moment, but we'll start with Mr. Mark Goldbridge, who Chris has said he is a clown to laugh at, and absolutely. But the thing is, he was being dead serious. Half of the team that Man United played that he said would get in a Liverpool first team, based on this performance, the Man United players would not get in the Man United under 18 squad.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Neville made a massive case, and he was stone-faced when he said it, that Ronaldo would easily walk into this Liverpool team. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He was a disgrace for somebody who has come into the club on huge amounts of money. They shouldn't have got him, and it was only a case of signing because they didn't want City to get him. But he's the leader. He's the big star, and he put in a terrible performance. Not one of these Man United players would even get a sniff of that Liverpool team. And it's actually ironic that probably United's best player was the one who kept himself out of any of the game, and that was Lindelof. And he's only the best player because you didn't hear about him. He wasn't involved in anything.
Yeah, the ironic thing there is that he got a 2.3, did Lindelof. Ronaldo's got a 2.8 and is second top rated for United, behind a 3.8 for De Gea, who kept it at 5. Let's put it that way. He kept it to 5.
But even he was poor, though.
Indeed, being a near post because first.
A lot of Liverpool's goals were simple goals. I mean, the Salah's, I think it was his hat-trick goal. It was a pass. He passed it into the corner, and De Gea was absolutely nowhere near it. So not one Man United player.
Hayes' goal to open it with a pass past him.
Yeah, nobody in Man United colours looks any good in this game, but Liverpool looks scarily good. Scarily good.
I was particularly impressed with, as we mentioned, about Ibrahim Konate making his first start. Go to Old Trafford, make your first start. That's intimidating. I remember.
And you're the man marking Ronaldo.
Yeah,
you've got to keep Ronaldo quiet. And he had Ronaldo in his pocket. It's as simple and clear as that.
He literally won. I think he won every ball in the air, which is what he's paid to do.
Mm-hmm.
And big him. Do you know what? If Matip can't keep himself fit this year, and to be fair, he was just being rested for this game. Konate came in. Liverpool.
You don't
good.
drop this Konate though. If he can hold one of the best players to ever play football quiet for 90 minutes, you don't drop this Konate at all. So Matip's got a long wait for his next game, I think.
But at the same time, looking at the injury we picked up in midfield, we may have to do a little bit of juggling around with formations, perhaps.
Yeah, chuck Matip in midfield.
Well, to be fair, Konate can play midfield if need be as well, so it's not a problem if we need to, sort of thing. We actually remember in the chat, we actually had Connor over on Twitch say, "Can you put Alisson in midfield? We might have a chance." Then I remember that one.
Yeah.
And Alisson's probably good with the ball at his feet, so that's probably not. You probably don't want that right now.
Alisson in that midfield could have easily stripped the ball from McTominay and Fred easily, without even a shadow of a doubt.
It was scary. When I was looking over the team that Goldbridge has said would be the combined team, he had De Gea in goal over Alisson because he thinks that De Gea has had a better year than Alisson has.
What I mean, like Chris said, it's good to laugh at. You can't dislike him because he is passionate about his club. He does waffle a lot of rubbish, but
he did pick Trent and he did pick Van Dijk, but he picked Varane at centre half alongside Van Dijk. And to be fair,
Varane. They miss Varane.
They absolutely do. Absolutely do. But he picked Shaw over Robertson. Because Robertson hadn't had a good season last year.
Apparently. He's loyal. I mean, you can't fault his loyalty.
But Shaw's had a terrible season this year. He had a great season after the Euros, had a great Euros, but did not have a good start to the season. He's not had a good start to the season at all. No. Picked Pogba and Bruno Fernandes instead of Milner and instead of Henderson and Milner. I can understand maybe dropping one of them for one of those.
Pogba, no, not on this performance. This was
not at all.
I mean, the whole talk was perhaps
players. I think.
Go on.
Players. It's just the fact that with this Liverpool team, the sum of the parts is better than the parts. I butchered that saying, but you know what I'm saying, like
yeah.
The team is better than the people who are in the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think,
and especially if you look at the performance that Pogba put on, the whole kind of talk was that Ollie was kind of looking to use him as a super sub, that he would come on and change the game, and he did. He did do that, but not in the way that Ollie wanted him. He was awful. And then got sent off for his tribbles and really kind of put a dampener on Man United's day. But again, I have to reiterate how Ole has got the brass neck to stay on at this job when this is arguably the worst home performance by Man United in a decade.
It's the worst performance they've ever. I mean, we talked about records tumbling yesterday. Salah scoring 10 games in a row for Liverpool, which no Liverpool has ever done, which amazed me.
Mm-hmm.
The first player in Premier League history to score an away hat trick at Old Trafford.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself, I genuinely didn't know that one. I genuinely thought someone had done it before.
No, I'm sure. Didn't David Bentley once get a hat trick at Old Trafford? I think he did when Blackburn beat him 4-3.
I'm doing that because that was the thing going around on Twitter. First player to ever score a away hat trick.
I'm going to look it up. That may have been at home then.
You look it up, Mags, and see you can find it for us. 5 minutes ago, Matt says only Bruno Fernandes or Varane make the Liverpool team.
No, yeah, so the hat trick was at Ewood. So it could be that.
But to be fair, this Solskjaer came out and said in the interview after the game, we're so close now. I'm like, to what? The exit door? Seriously?
He was smiling in his post-match interview, you know. He was actually smiling. I mean, he should have been embarrassed by this performance. Embarrassed. It was the worst Man United performance that I can remember. And I'm old as fuck.
I remember the game a couple of seasons ago, maybe a while ago. It was when Brendan Rodgers was still at Liverpool. Liverpool went to Man United and we won 3-0. It was an ugly game. It was bowling shoe ugly, in fact, the JL would say back in the day. But it was a 3-0 win, and I thought that was the worst I've ever seen United play.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that they haven't been beat like handily before. I've seen that multiple times, but never where no one on the team has put in a performance. Yeah, they may as well have played the youth team for all the effort that this Man United team put in. I mean, Harry Maguire last season was one of was one of the best defenders. He was the one of the best players for England in the Euros. This Harry Maguire, he looked like a clown. He looked like an absolute clown. It's ridiculous how poorly every single one of those players performed.
Yeah.
I thought 6-1 against Spurs last season. Far worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was a sort. I mean, bear in mind we had a lot of freak results last season due to any number of factors. One being having no fans in for most of the year. You got a lot of freak results. I said that you probably wouldn't see a result as bad as that for Man United again. I was right because this was worse.
Mm-hmm.
This was worse, and if you want proof of that, the memes about the fans being forced to stay in the stadium
that shows it. I mean, Man United do have a loyal fan base, but they were coming out of that stadium by the thousands at half time. By the time Liverpool got the fifth goal, the Man United side was pretty much empty.
Yeah,
and that just shows how low down this Man United team have tumbled.
I was looking at the amount of people who were left in, and there was some reports saying that there was 42,000 who left before the end of the game. That was not the case. It was 42,000 were left still, though you'd be amazed about that.
No, I'm actually shocked because the Sky Sports cut to the aerial cameras, and you could just see like a flood of people just leaving the stadium.
Matt from Tyler's going to make the same joke I made last night. Absolutely right. About the trains at 6:30. Yes,
the train to Surrey.
This was. We could wax lyrical about how good Liverpool were and how bad Man United are. Liverpool are at the sharp end. Man United, bear in mind, are still in. I think they're still sixth in the table, which is still in touch, and they're still thereabouts. But they've really got to get their act together and fast, because what allegedly what Ole Solskjaer said was when he named the same team which started against Atalanta, they deserve a second chance.
So they're currently seventh, but they've got one win in 5 games. That's how bad the form is.
They've lost 4 for the last 5, haven't they?
Yeah, they've picked up 1 point out of the last 12 available. It's not good.
If that was me, I'd have been
8
sacked.
points. They're 8 points already off top spot. 8 points with just 9 games gone.
If one of us was managing any team who were the Premier League contender at the start of the season, we'd been sacked by now.
Yeah,
absolutely. We would have been sacked by now. Yeah. So I mean, it was actually gripping to watch Gary Neville and Graham Souness go for each other yesterday after the game, arguing about who should he be sacked, should he not. Souness said they won't sack him because at the end of the season is when they'll change manager event.
Well, then they've got a long, hard season to go. Then
Solskjaer was never the intended manager. I think, Phil. He was brought in as the interim manager at the last end of the season, and
he hasn't got the respect of the team. He's too nice of a bloke. It's as simple as that. For a team like Man United, who are always going to be looking to fight for trophies, you have to be a ruthless manager. You have to command respect, and Ollie doesn't. He's just too nice of a bloke.
Yeah, Matt from 5 Nerds go with a stat which I was not aware of. Arsenal didn't win for a month, and they're level with United now.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That is how bad their form is.
Yeah. It's a shame because I do think Ole does deserve credit. He came in at a time where Man United were in free fall. They were in absolute crisis with Jose Mourinho, as always happens with his teams. They were collapsing under their own weight. He came in, he steadied the ship, and he's taken them to a point where they are, or at least before this season, they were a stable Champions League club, which is a lot more than a lot of other teams around them, where it could even hope for, never mind, actually attain. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think the way he's developed young players, I feel like Marcus Rashford's come along quite a fair way under Solskjaer. I feel like Mason Greenwood's become a very good under Solskjaer. I feel like that he's really sort of developed the young players, taking it to a step further than like Van Gaal did, and definitely what Mourinho did. But yeah, you're not going to win a title with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the end of the day. Like, he deserves a lot of credit for getting Man United to the point where they are, but they need someone else to take them further.
Mm-hmm. And especially when you consider he spent over 400 million in the 3 years that he's been there. He's got a 73 million pound player sat on the bench, someone who Man United actively courted for 18 months. He's got Ronaldo back at the club, the hero back at the club, and yet they're still in 7th place. So yeah, I think it's time that Ole moved on. And like Matt from 5 Nose Go says in the chat, I don't think he's a bad manager. Absolutely not. I think he's just not got the charisma, I suppose, to manage Man United. And I think staying at Man United actually ruins his legacy with the club, because he's a hero. For some of the stuff he did as a player was phenomenal, and I think sticking around,
99.
Yeah, he's ruining that legacy, I think.
I would point out in the Chain Wrestling chat earlier, Solskjaer has won it. You don't hear that much nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is really, really unfortunate. But I think that I just think that there are some managers which don't fit certain clubs. He's not good experience to be a manager of this.
It was an emotional appointment, just it was with Lampard.
When they
appointment to make, there was all this goodwill because he turned it around against PSG. There was all this goodwill around Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It was cheap because he was already there as a caretaker manager. And fans wanted it because he performed so well during his caretaker spell. I don't think they lost the game in like 13 when he was caretaker manager. So it was the easy appointment to make.
Did he overperform?
I think he did initially. I feel like he's got... Go on.
It's weird to talk about a manager overperforming, but he was brought in as the caretaker to manage him to the end of the season, to appoint a new manager. But because he did so well, they had no option but to give him the job, really.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's definitely somewhat. I mean, but the thing is that other clubs have been in similar situations and not done that. I mean, the one I always go back to is Chelsea. When they got rid of Jose Mourinho the second time, when they were, I think the 17th, 18th at Christmas, something like that. The season after they won the league, they brought in Gus Hiddink and they ended up finishing 9th, I think, something like that. So he did a really good job, Gus Hiddink. But instead of giving him the job, they went out and they got a proper top-class coach, Antonio Conte, and they won the league the season after. Mm-hmm. So, other clubs have that sort of ruthless edge about them. They're willing to go out, spend the money on the manager, make the harder appointments. And Man United didn't want to do that. They just, went with the safe, easy option.
Liverpool did it once as well.
Getting that sort of, getting the sort of momentum behind him for pulling out the results and getting the fan backing to the point where it was the natural thing to do. Credit to Ole for doing that, and credit to him for, steadying the ship. But he's not your elite level manager. And to expect Man United to win a league title with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as their manager, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. With great respect to Solskjaer, I think is he in over his head, but looking at his coaching staff he's got there, Michael Carrick's never done this at this level before. Mike Phelan did for a while under Ferguson, but
Well, there was a shot of Phil Neville and Michael Carrick on the coaching bench, and none of them had any energy. None of them had any kind of like gene up of the rest of the team. They were as depressed as the Man United fans. And if the management team are not showing effort and not showing passion, why the fuck should the players?
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. Matt from Fallers goes to Conte in Mourinho a 3-5-2 formation. I don't understand why United fans wanting to try fitting their players into that. It doesn't work. You can't exactly.
The fact that he's probably the biggest name out there who's out of a job, so I think it's natural that people are going to say that. And the fact that he is used to, like we said with Chelsea, like with Inter Milan, he's used to taking over clubs who are in this sort of situation and propelling them upwards. So I can see why people say that, but like you say, he doesn't. The Man United players don't fit his 3-5-2 system.
And that's one of the things we've seen for years. I mean, Pulis, when he was at Stoke, he bought players who would fit the formation he would play rather than try and fit players into that formation. I'm sure they have the same with Burnley. Sean Dyche gets the players to fit the formation that you guys play, or how he plays. He doesn't change how everything to fit a certain player. I think that's what Solskjaer's tried to do with Ronaldo.
From the top level to the bottom of the game. But it was just the fact that he was there. I can understand it because if you're given the choice to sign, or you're given the option to sign one of the greatest players, not only of our generation, but of all generations, who still got, he definitely got over 20 goals last season. I can't remember the exact figure.
He was the top scorer in Serie A, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For, 10 million euros or whatever it was, that it seems like a no-brainer. And especially when he already has that affinity with Manchester United, I can see why it happens, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, like you say, it doesn't fit with the rest of Man United. He doesn't seem like he fits. Like, you compare him to Cavani. Cavani fights for everything. He presses high. He's just an absolute grafter. He's the complete opposite to Ronaldo. Ronaldo doesn't feel like he fits in this team, which is a mad thing to say about one of the greatest players of all time.
So last season he got 36 games out of 44 appearances. 36 goals out of 44 games, sorry.
That's all good. We know what you meant, man. It's getting late, it's fine. We knew what you meant. It's all good, buddy. It's hard to believe that this team that Man United are putting out finished second last year, and they've added Varane, Sancho, and Ronaldo to it. Granted, Varane was injured, but Sancho was on the bench. And I'm thinking, if you've spent that money on Sancho, why aren't you starting him in a big game like this? Why is he not? Why is he not playing there instead of a Rashford or a Greenwood? I've got a lot of time for Marcus Rashford, especially for last year with everything he's done off the pitch as well. But to say Greenwood's going to be an amazing talent for sure. But Sancho is your big money signing from the summer, your big one that will protract it for 2 years, and you don't play him in what is the biggest game in club football, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I really can't. Especially like you said, they've courted this player for 18 months for him to sit on the bench all the time. It makes absolutely no sense.
Makes you wonder: is it a Solskjaer signing?
Does Solskjaer have any say in the signings? I don't know. I don't think that he does.
Yeah. I say some of the jokes that were coming in to us while we were watching along was someone said that Solskjaer applied to be a local PE teacher and was only offered an assistant's job.
Yeah.
There was some ridiculous jokes about that. Let's face it, this is a story going to run and run and run. I dare say next they've got the Volley. It's going to be equally glum because they got Tottenham on Saturday. And
No, it's going to be a horrific game to watch.
Some people have been saying apparently, and we mentioned it, I believe in our Twitter DMs. Apparently he has until after the next game against Tottenham they're going to replace him allegedly. Not entirely sure if that actually is going to happen or not. I'm not sure if necessarily everything on football Twitter is worth reading, but we try and filter for the good stuff, and we usually rely on people who like friend of the show, Fabrizio Romano, to give us the information we need, or Chris's friend at Burnley, who is clearly the tea lady or someone. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so gentlemen, thank you so much for helping me talk through the 10 games from the Premier League this weekend. Chris, despite your few internet gremlins you've been having this evening, thank you very much indeed. Would you like to tell everybody where they can get in touch with you on Twitter?
I forgot to put it in at the bottom when I was signing back in. It's at Chris_BFC_. You can follow me there. I recently appeared on the UGT podcast, so give that a listen. They're great people, them there.
That always works.
Just in case his internet went down again, we'll just throw one in.
Indeed. And Chris, you are a very, very valued member of Radio Tekkers family here. We love having you part of every show that we put out with you on it. We love having you part of the team. Mags?
Hello.
Yourself?
Yeah, you can follow me down here at Podfather Mags on Twitter, where I'm usually arguing with someone or I'm posting links to the disgusting amount of content that I'm always involved in. So come and check it out.
Which gets a lot of views, to be fair. We're getting some great views from all of you, of course. Find me at...
I am the... Well, no, Ori's the draw. I was going to say I am the draw, but Ori is definitely the draw.
Ori is the
big fish.
I'm the big fish, yeah.
Yeah, you are Mr. Kablam, sir. We're getting some shirt at some point for sure.
As Andy Payton himself told you.
Yes, I've actually saved that video as well. It's brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic. As always,
10% off Andy Payton videos now.
The guy who did my outro this week is fantastic. I love it. So find me at the Matter.uk. Make sure you join us again next Monday, same time for myself, Mags, maybe Tanner, maybe Chris, maybe both, maybe someone else. You never know. We'll be back next week. On behalf of us all here at Tekkers, that will do it for this week. We are out of here.